Part of the gap in the industry right now is that only 2% of automation projects hit their ROI. So the idea is well, it is, it is. And as we keep continuing to push for AI and continue to push for automation, actually having a better understanding of what it's going to do for me based on my unique operation. So these are things that you can model inside of our tool.
Hello, and welcome to Speaking of Supply Chain, where we explore trends, current events, and innovations impacting the logistics and supply chain industries. I'm your host, Ellen Wood. In today's rapidly evolving warehouse and distribution landscape, operations grapple with significant changes, including labor shortages and escalating operational costs. Recent statistics reveal that labor expenses can constitute up to 65% of a warehouse's total budget. To address these pressing issues, labor management solutions like LaborAI offer advanced tools designed to optimize labor efficiency and productivity. In this episode, we're going to explore how this tool can help warehouses navigate the complexities of modern operations. And to join me for the discussion is LaborAI founder, Lee Rector. Welcome, Lee. Great to have you.
Thank you, Ellen. Great to be here.
I am really looking forward to our discussion today, but first, let's take a quick moment to get to know you a little bit better. So today's icebreaker question is, what fact about your life would most impress your 5-year-old self?
Well, not too much, but I think the fact that I've probably been in 70 countries and been around the world, over 30 times, nobody would expect that, you're basically a globetrotter when you're that age. So that would probably impress them. The fact that I'm on an airplane.
Did you dream about traveling when you were a little kid? Was that something that you found exciting?
No, growing up in Canada, I wanted to play in the NHL, professional hockey. So.
Well, I mean, there's still time, I suppose, if you want to make that dream happen.
Probably not gonna
happen. Let's see. I have traveled not nearly as extensively as you have, but I've traveled a little bit, and that would probably impress my 5-year-old self. The other thing that would probably, I think I've talked about this on another episode, but I think the thing that would really impress my 5-year-old self, because this was a big deal when I was 5, it was when minivans first started becoming popular, and my parents only had it's me and my sister. So there's only 2 of us. There was never a need for a minivan, but my cousins who had, 3 or more kids, they all had minivans. So my aunts and uncles would drive these minivans, and I thought it was super cool. And I have a minivan because I have 3 kids. And my youngest son turns 5 actually next month, and he thinks the van is the coolest place on earth. It's got the TV embedded, the DVD player. And yeah, for a 5-year-old, having a minivan was like top notch. As a grown-up, it feels rather like a letdown.
So we were more along the lines of when I was 5 years old. It's like, wow, we have color in the TV.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Big deals. Now we've got huge TVs. We've got all of this technology that brings us all the information. Yeah, my 5-year-old self would have never seen half of this coming.
Oh, boy, they've got so much to look forward to.
Oh, I know. It's going to be so cool by the time my 5-year-old's
you'll both
age.
Be sitting in the back seat, and you'll have a robot driving.
Yes, hopefully, and not running into anything. That's a different episode. Autonomous vehicles is a different episode.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's get to our topic today, which is your tool, LaborAI. So can you share the origin story? How did this all come about?
Well, I've been in the industry for well over 30 years. And over the last, we'll call it 15 years, part of the problem in the industry from a technical point of view is that we were building, we'll call it management systems, whether it's WMS or LMS, labor, to manage labor. And the cost of implementing those systems was actually outstripping the benefit. And so essentially the services were 4 to 5 to 1 for the cost of the software, which made it punitive for any company to actually try and install it. And then to try and get an ROI on that was very difficult. And only 1% of the companies could actually afford that risk. Going back to 2015, I had already envisioned a simpler system by building the engineering, sort of all the services already into the software. So rather than pay for a system that enabled an engineer to put in values, what if we were to pre-populate a solution with engineered values? So we started that model. I took a hiatus on that through acquisitions and companies growing and things like that. And in 2022, I decided that I would revisit that and build it as a new way of handling labor. And our model was to build it and make it affordable and applicable to essentially any company on the planet, whether you were a small mother and pop shop or, you're one of the largest companies on the planet, make it scalable. And the only way to do that was to make the engineering essentially at a base rate that it didn't matter. So if you take a look at our standards, we actually have almost 1,000 standards in our database now. A standard for stepping on the fork is stepping off the fork, which is as low as you can get in terms of a task. But at 1.6 seconds, whether I'm in the US, I'm in Asia, or I'm in Europe, if I'm Asia, then maybe they're a little bit shorter. It's 1.62 seconds. And in Germany, because they're a little bit taller, it's 1.58. At 1.6 seconds, that change, that differential is so nominal that we've taken out sort of all the swings and averages from side to side around the globe. And so by building a database that is at that level of elemental side, and we build things up, we are now able to translate that to whether you're a company that's got a full-blown LMS, or you are just, you're running almost like a garage type operation. You've got 3 people in the back, and we can then calculate the tasks on that. So the idea was to make a universal solution, but then make it scalable so that it's attractive enough to the top 100 or 200 companies on the planet that it would replace their thought process of building a full LMS. So we've now got to the point where LaborAI is enterprise as well as standalone. And for a company, as large global operation, they could get up and running once the API is built in 5 days. So, and get calibrated results. So in fact, we've just recently done a blind study with another company that has an LMS system. They paid, well over 6 figures for that operation. And within a day and a half, we calibrated our solution to their solution. Their standards are set at 85%, and our software came back and calculated at 83.2. So having something that's accurate and quick to get up and running is far more applicable in today's market than something that's being precise that takes you months and months and months of services to get up and running to get to the same answer.
Right. So that reminds me of a saying that one of my mentors used to say: good enough today is better than perfect tomorrow.
Yeah. And 100 times cheaper.
It sounds like your solution is quick to implement, which I can see essentially a great benefit to that. But I know that there are, individuals out there who are going to question, if it's that easy, what are we missing? With that increasing complexity with those operations, when you scale up, we're experiencing labor shortages right now, across the industry, all over the place. So how can it assist these warehouse managers forecasting those labor needs if it's so easy and quick to do it? Like, how accurate are we able to get?
How accurate? I always use the term, it's how long is a piece of string, because there's really no answer to how accurate. But if we're within 2% of actual, you can make a management decision on that. And how easy is it? Well, typically our model, you would run the software, you would run a model today for tomorrow's work profile. So we would tell you how many hours of labor you have, where those people need to work. So, if we look at a typical warehouse, I've got people in receiving, I've got people in put away, picking, replen. So, and then we'll call it the subcategories of that. I'm picking units versus cases versus pallets and things like that. We would then come back and say, you need 164 hours worth of labor tomorrow. And in that, you need 24 hours in receiving, you need 32 hours and 33.7 hours in picking and such, so that you can build your labor plan for tomorrow. Now, because we're using AI in the software as well, the AI, the more models you run, so if you run this daily over the next 6 months, let's say we set our target standard at 75%. So a modest level.
Okay.
And then what would happen is our software would learn as you approach to be continually at 75%. So in other words, I'm not using more or less. Then the software then would actually micro-size, raise your levels, like flying an airplane. You make small moves so that at the end of the year, your standard that you're actually working toward is considerably higher than where it was. Maybe it's 3%, maybe it's 13%. But what happens is by making small changes to the way you do things, and when you're ordering people, you then can forecast your day's business. And then intraday, which is a very big thing, is if I said I needed to do 100 units today, and at 11 o'clock in the morning, I've already done 60 units, I don't need to have those people. Conversely, if I get to 1 o'clock in the afternoon and I've only done 40%, I'm actually working at a lower standard, I've had something that's caused me, the software will then say, well, you're probably looking at 14 hours of overtime. How am I going to handle that? So we're not fixing the labor problem, but what we're doing is that critical operational planning of not having waste, right? Or if I said, oh, by the way, you're going to need 134 hours of overtime today because somebody dropped in a massive order for you, it's in your best interest not to pay overtime and to go in and hire 30 temps to handle that and to mitigate your cost. So these are the things that we call critical operational planning that you can do inside of our tool.
All right. So recognizing that, one of the critical aspects of managing people is employee engagement, satisfaction, in order to reduce that turnover. So how does LaborAI contribute to, creating that work environment that supports and motivates the warehouse staff?
So, part and parcel of this we'll refer to as the gamification inside the building. I'm going to use an analogy if you give me 2 minutes on this. If you're driving from Chicago to Nashville, and I say to you, how long is that going to take? You're going to say to me, well, it usually takes 4.5 hours. And I say, okay, great. But if you're going to leave now and you're going to go to Nashville, what's the first thing you do? You go to some mapping application, either Google or Wave, and it says it's going to take you, because there's traffic on 65, you're probably going to go, I-80 and around the corner or whatever, and go 67, whatever the numbers are, right? And it says, oh, if you're going to take this, you choose, I'm going to go 65, and it says it's going to take you 4 hours and 21 minutes. Okay, so that's the standard. Now you get in your car and you're going 4 hours and 21 minutes. Do you drive with the thought process that I'm going to go 4 hours and 20 minutes? Or do you say to yourself, no, I'm going to do that in 4 hours. I'm going to beat that standard. And that's the gamification. Now, if I do that same thing inside the warehouse, and intraday, I'm showing people that we think that we need to do all this work by 5 o'clock today, and we can do this many orders. And you gamify that, and people then start to see that we are getting better. Then you get engagement, and you also have things where the company then can do shift type incentives. If we do this work today, we'll have a barbecue on Friday. And because it's no longer subjective, my warehouse manager says we either did or we didn't, the staff can work as a team. We got to speed up today because, we got to get all this stuff done. Or, you know what, there's a hockey game on tonight. I want to get home. I don't want to have to stay late. I want to do things better. And so the gamification is whether I work inside of a lot of businesses, we have different business units. I have e-commerce, I have B2B, I have commercial, whatever. You can then compare performance from business unit to business unit using different metrics, but the same ideal performance rate. So what it does is it allows the organization and the people on the floor to actually see their performance in a measurable model, versus all those guys got the easy orders. That's the easy part of the business. We're never going to approach them. Or if I'm comparing site to site, all those guys, they've got a little tiny building. They're always going to be faster. And stop looking at comparing activity as a function of productivity. Okay. So those are the things that will in turn get better engagement. And if I get more people, I don't have the requirement for temporary people. I'll be more likely to hire the right people and not have to swell by, I'll use, some of the big, we'll call it, consumers of labor these days. They order labor in the morning like it's an all-you-can-eat buffet. They don't know if they need it, but they bring it all on. And what they do is they're driving up the price of labor. They're driving up the scarcity of labor, even though they don't use it. And that's one of our major problems in the market these days. The other problem is we don't build warehouses where people live, so they have to get there. And because we're building warehouses further and further out, then we have a transport issue, right? So that makes labor even more scarce. So getting the right size labor the day before is going to be far more efficient than actually trying to order, the all-you-can-eat buffet and hope that I've got the right people, right? We've heard this our whole lives. Hope is not a plan.
That's true. Absolutely true. And I love that you likened that to the challenge accepted of the time on when you're navigating somewhere. Cause I know I do that when I map out somewhere and it gives me, my destination time. It's like, all right, I think I can beat it by 2 minutes, even if it's a short drive and I think, oh, well, if I hit all the lights right, or I make this other turn I can get there faster. I think that's a great way to really engage your team in trying to, continuous improvement, make sure that things are getting better all the time, but not only improving, just informing and letting the employees and the warehouse, whether they're temporary or whether they're full employees, have some stake in the game and really feel like the work that they're doing is important and it's valuable and it's making a difference toward the company's bottom line, because nothing is more demoralizing than feeling like the work you're doing is just time spent doing something and it's not important. That's a terrible feeling that my contribution isn't worth anything to the bottom line.
It's not a dichotomy, but it's a misconception in the market. No, most people, and you've just pointed out, don't aspire to be average. They want to beat the average, right? But most operations, all they deal in is trying to be average. Most WMS systems out there set the target as the average of what we've done, right? So one of my larger customers, like a global supply chain group, the chairman of that company says, we've spent millions of dollars over the last 5 years figuring out everything we've done. And he says, you know how much money we've spent on what we should have done? Zero. So what happens is we have people in the buildings that want to aspire to be better than average. And yet all we do from a corporation is try to be average. Right? So that's part of the gamification side, right? If I'm doing 54 cases an hour, is that good? Is that 30% of the standard? Is it 90? Most companies don't know.
Sure.
So they're saying, well, we measure ourselves. We did 34 cases an hour this week. We did 35 hours next week. We're 10% better. Great. But then product mix changes and we go down to 27 cases an hour. And then all of a sudden, well, we're not performing at the right standard because the averages, as you know, there's such a huge swing in average that doesn't do anything. And that really demoralizes the employee because the manager's looking at averages. And depending on your luck of the draw, you may get a crappy day or a crappy assignment and you're being compared to average, but your order wasn't average. Those are the things that bother people.
So that brings up an interesting point. So considering, the challenges of integrating something like this, you were just talking about the customer who'd spent millions of dollars, trying to find these answers, to bring in the technology that will help them have this level of visibility. Given all the effort that's put into it, how does LaborAI number one, address some of that resistance that we know happens with any type of implementation, but the level of customization that's available to address that issue of having averages that aren't necessarily accurate.
So because we calibrate a standard, it's unique for every single operation. So part of the process of implementation is tell me the size of the building you've got. What type of equipment are you running? How do your orders come out? What is your process? These are all things that are like tick boxes in our application. And then it chooses which standards are applied to that particular task. So we take out all of this customization. So typically our interface is at the inventory level and at the order profile level, or the order itself level. So we're not talking about a massive integration. We're still not talking about an execution level solution. So we're talking about from a planning solution. So we get a dump of the activity file, and then we run that through our standards. And within, 30 seconds, you've got your standards for the time frame that you're looking at. If you want to change things, you can rerun the standard. So let's say you're no longer shipping toothpaste this week. You're shipping cases of laundry detergent. Now, a case is not a case. You get 216 cases of toothpaste on a pallet, and you get 36 of laundry detergent. So now my work content's considerably higher. I could change my standards to accommodate that work standard for that period. Versus looking at a line. Oh, what's a line? Again, when companies compare lines, it's how long's a piece of string, right? I got the line that had one line, 2 units. And I got the other one that was, it's 27 pallets. So my work content is 2.5 hours on one and 30 seconds on the other. So we want to take those anomalies out.
So dialing in to get super specific, but also, having all of those variables as part of the system that you're able to have that agility to switch it up when something has changed that you want to measure accurately against what's actually happening. It's apples to apples instead of apples to oranges.
Yeah, well, and that's exactly, the point. We still talk about we want to be agile. The only way the solution makes it universal is that if it's simple to use, simple to implement, and agile to change. So you're not calling me to redo your samples or your standards.
Right.
You just rerun a model, right? So you hit a button. If you want AI to make a recommendation, you hit the AI button. What does AI recommend based on our current operation? Oh, maybe you should look at reducing your distance between SKUs by 3 inches. That will then increase your profitability by, 7%. So these are the small things. We're not telling you to go out and buy automation, but if you buy automation, you could actually model that inside the software. How will it affect us?
So that's an interesting point, because that could be something where people use the tool to say, okay, here's where we are today. This is what's going on. This is our model. This is our, our average, and then run a model to see, we're considering this piece of technology. Will this make an appreciable difference? Will I get a return on this investment? Will this help our warehouse operations? And then, comparing, maybe this versus that, this particular, AGV versus, this shrink wrapper or whatever, any type of technology that would come into a warehouse, you could model that scenario to see if it's going to have the ROI that at least that supplier is promising, given the very detailed way and processes in your own facility.
Exactly. And part of the gap in the industry right now is that only 2% of automation projects hit their ROI. And as we keep continuing to push for AI and continue to push for automation, actually having a better understanding of what it's going to do for me based on my unique operation. So one of the biggest overstatements in automation these days is that, our machine will do 1,200 units an hour. So I put that in and I buy a machine, but I only do 600 units a day. So I bought it in and my
Mm-hmm.
machine works 1 hour a day and does nothing for the rest of the 24 hours. So I don't get anywhere near the utilization. Or it does 1,200 units an
Mm-hmm.
hour. That's great. But I do 30 units an hour for till 5 o'clock at night, where I put in 3,000 units. And now I have a scalability issue that my automation can't actually do the work when I need it to be done. So these are things that you can model inside of our tool.
Well, and not only that, but whatever technology you're looking at for automation, is that 1,200 units an hour, is that overkill? Is this too large a purchase for what I need? Or, conversely, is that not going to be sufficient? Do I need, multiple things? Do I need to look at a larger scale automation solution, because this one thing by itself is not going to deliver on the return that I need on that investment. It's just not enough. It's not enough of an appreciable difference or improvement that makes sense. Let's look at something else. So I think this is giving some great insights. What measurable impacts? So we're talking about ROI. What have some of your clients achieved with this tool that you can talk about? Because I know sometimes when it comes to our clients, they want to keep their secrets close to their chest, but they all want that competitive advantage.
Well, and nobody really wants anybody to know, where they were. I was just at one of the largest supply chain companies on the planet doing one of their sites, and one of their clients. And in 5 days, we reduced their labor component by 50 people. We've done other projects where, the client was making the changes while we were still in the building. And they basically generated $250,000 of savings in 2 days. So, there's things where people just they're not doing, there's a gap in their business. Our typical ROI for clients is somewhere between, we'll call it 30 and 40 times the return monthly. Because we're measuring labor monthly and we're actually charging the client just a small monthly fee, the ROIs are extremely large. So, as I said, it's an untapped market. And if you can make a solution that's rapid implementation, and as you said, I can measure accurately today, the biggest problem right now is most companies actually have no idea what their own performance is. So they're not managing it. And if you use the old adage, if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. The first time we do a site, we turn on the light bulb, they are already making changes. And our software can say, you should probably only have 4 people in receiving, but you have 9. So right away, they figure out what the problem is in receiving. Or do I have a problem in picking? Like, why do I have 6 pickers and I have 22 checkers?
All right. So given that there is a labor shortage and we find some of these inefficiencies, you're saying that right away, immediately out of the box, as soon as those inputs are in there and as soon as organizations are seeing where things are not ideal in different departments, they're able to reallocate those resources to where they're actually needed within the facility. Obviously we don't want to get rid of labor that is quality labor, employees that show up every day on time. You don't want to lose those valuable assets to your organization, but the redistribution of the effort within the warehouse can be much better on day one.
Absolutely. In the industry, we've referred to that as labor balancing. And what you see is you go into businesses, whether you're a 3PL or you're a multi-business unit operation, they typically silo the labor. You work for this client, you work in this business unit. And so they operate as silos, and they don't say, collectively we need 100 people. But because each business unit has sort of siloed, they end up having 122 in the building. Okay. And then we want to cross-train people. Don't just hire somebody to do receiving. Teach them how to
Yes.
pick or whatever. If you have somebody on one type of equipment, maybe get them to learn how to use a man up or an order picker or something, so that if there's no task associated with that equipment, I just move them to a different vehicle. So that labor balancing is critical in being functionally effective on your labor.
Well, and back to the other topic that we were on a few minutes ago, where it's talking about, the work environment and employee engagement and satisfaction. When you have someone who is only trained on one thing, that gets very hard on physically on their body to do that repetitive task over and over and over and never have any change. So the cross training really gives the organization the opportunity, number one, to have a more flexible labor force, but number two, to really look out for the employees' well-being mentally and physically, that they have, different tasks that they can do throughout the day. Obviously, they might need a break, from doing picking all the time. Now we're going to put you over here on, palletizing or something like that. There's different ways to keep your team engaged by saying, look, you're not just a robot here. You're not only doing this one thing. That's not where your value is. Your value is in the breadth of different things that you can do for this warehouse or within this warehouse, within this facility, that makes you a more valuable employee. And we want you to be that, because that means you're more valuable to us as well.
And one of the points in there that we haven't done a lot at this point of qualifying, and you've pointed it out, soft tissue injuries by repetitive tasks in the warehouse, because I only do one thing, is actually a very large concern, especially in e-commerce, where it's, unless you're using AMR or something, the traditional warehouse in North America is still picking small items, and the people are standing. They're not using equipment. So they're pushing shopping carts, or they're pushing tote carts or things like that. And these soft tissue injuries are one of the greatest causes for employee absence and employee turnover, because they can't take it, or the monotony of it drives them crazy. So cross training is a big thing. And at the same time, one of the ways to engage people is receiving's a pretty easy physical task, but it's also where you want your people that are actually the most meticulous people, right? So,
right.
I always use the analogy, and I'll use a football analogy. You've got the best center on the planet, with Jason Kelsey, best center on the planet.
Okay.
He's great at, doing one thing, but nobody ever said, we're going to promote Jason Kelsey to be our quarterback, right? Because he's good at one thing, but he's not good at another thing. And in warehouses, we tend to promote people because they've been good at one thing. When we don't look at what their skill set is, we just promote them, because the natural progression is that the people that work in the business the longest end up in receiving, because it's the easiest job.
Okay. Well, and one other thing I was thinking about when you were talking about the soft tissue injuries is, not only does this give them the opportunity to, cross train and do something else, but it could have an impact on, whatever health benefits and medical benefits that the company is providing, if they're able to create a more balanced and healthy environment for their employees to work in through that cross training. And I know we've gotten a little bit off topic, but
No, but it's all on topic. And I guess the one piece, when we talk about reduction in labor or unnecessary labor, let's put it that way, not reduction, unnecessary labor, is for a lot of companies, they could then turn this around to ESG grants, environmental sustainability grants, because you have less equipment required, less travel, less carbon footprint, and all of these things that are now on the government grants list allow companies then to start focusing on, well, we're taking these measures to actually reduce our carbon footprint by getting the right size of people. So not having a parking lot that's full of cars, that's 800 people, right? So this should be part and parcel of when you're looking at the entire plan of your operation. And obviously ESG grants are a big topic these days. And rather than just putting solar panels on your roof, look at things outside of the box.
All right. So the ROI isn't only in the labor. There's so many other areas that can be improved that will contribute to the return on the investment for this particular tool.
Yeah, we're not greedy. We'll just talk about the stuff that's the easy, low-hanging fruit. But the ROIs typically for our clients range anywhere from 40 to 100 to 1 on a monthly basis.
Okay. Well, and I know that ProMat is coming up. So you said you were just traveling recently. We've got some more travel in our future in the upcoming months. And ProMat is the largest material handling show in North America. For those of our listeners who are not familiar with it, I've talked about it a few times. I know obviously MEBOK is going to be there, and LaborAI will be there as well in the Embassy Data booth. So what can attendees, or what can our listeners, if they're on the fence about going to ProMat, what do they have to look forward to seeing with LaborAI at ProMat? What is exciting this year?
Well, obviously introducing the enterprise version, and more importantly, understanding and seeing what AI will recommend for you, and what critical operational planning is actually affordable operational planning is available these days, versus just getting, dashboards that for a lot of people are very confusing, and having something that's simple, and tying it back in, and one of the things that we also want to outline, that LaborAI is really a performance measurement tool. You still require companies like MEBOK to actually come up with these solutions that'll help you, make your operation more efficient. Productivity can be measured as throughput of the building, and we measure the productivity of the people. So there are two different measures of productivity. Your people could be running at 100%, but a consulting company like MEBOK could bring you in process changes that will actually increase your throughput of the business by 100%, right? But what we want to do is we focus on the people, but bringing in automation, what automation's right for you. Those are things where we actually then look back to companies like MEBOK, who will be partnering with LaborAI, and you'll be the ones that will drive the benefit for the clients, because we're only getting them the certain part. What are we doing today? How can we manage better? But how do I get, how do I get to the next 18 months, or where are we going to be in 24 months? We don't do that. So I think that there's a good synergy. And whether you're going to ProMat for the first time, it's kind of like supply chain Disneyland. So anything that's in the industry, you'll be able to see. And one of the beauties of going to the MEBOK booth or coming to the LaborAI booth is that we'll be able to tell you if it's just from the top end. Maybe it benefits you, maybe it doesn't, by running through that. If you're on the fence, get off the fence, get out and see, get out the ProMat. Anything else, it's a learning experience. And if you don't know about it, you'll never be able to implement it.
All right. So real quick, you know what? I'm going to make sure just to put the booths, because I can't remember our booth number off the top of my head. And I doubt that anyone, would remember it from the podcast anyway. So we'll put the booth numbers in there so that they can come visit us at ProMat next month. Looking forward to seeing you in person and getting to say hello, because here in my little podcast studio, it's a little lonely. I don't get the interaction, so I'm really looking forward to seeing you and all of our listeners and potential new listeners at ProMat. It's a great event. I know we got completely off topic there talking about the show. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. There are some great insights. Thank you so much for bringing them into the warehouse process optimization and labor, the impact that it has on these facilities. Thank you so much, Lee, for joining us today and telling us about your amazing new tool.
Thank you, Ellen.
I'm sure there are a bunch of listeners out there who could find this beneficial to their operation, and I will make sure that they have access to Embassy data from our description and a link directly to you if they have any questions. If any of our listeners out there have a suggestion for another topic or would like to be a guest on our show, like Lee, we'd love to hear from you. You can contact me at podcast@mebok.com at any time. As always, thank you for listening to Speaking of Supply Chain. If you've enjoyed our show, please rate and review us on whatever podcast platform you prefer. We're on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Spotify. Be sure to tune in next time.